Good morning. Welcome to Mental Fortress Mondays. Who has ever tried a particular regime and stuck to it 100%? Maybe it's a nutritional regime. Maybe it's an exercise plan. Whatever it is. Today we're going to be talking more about that food side of things. 100% without cheating, as we call it, for longer than, say, 2 to 4 weeks or a couple weeks. Or how many people have wanted to cut something out of their nutritional regime, maybe trying to stop snacking or certain types of foods, and it just seems really, really hard to do. There are reasons we do this. Sometimes simply understanding them can make a world of a difference. Sometimes practicing something that helps us then to eliminate them can have a much better impact on our lives so that we can stick to all of those choices that we truly want to make for ourselves. Welcome to Mental Fortress Mondays. I'm Dr. Cheryl Carthouse, naturopathic doctor. Our mission here is to explore the who, what, where, when, why, and how of mindfulness and mindfulness-based practices and how they impact our physiology, our ability to think, to perform in our work and hobbies, and overall our quality of life. I started this series to provide support and develop resilience, mental resilience, during the recent pandemic. And there's still lots of transitioning happening as people are getting back to work. Things are sort of settling down in different ways. But as September approaches and school starts to happen, there's lots of new things that we're learning, lots of new ways about going around things. And especially if you have kids, that's going to be something that impacts you, or work in schools and all of that. We'll be learning lots of new approaches to things. Many people have these roles to adjust to, and all of it creates a particular kind of stress. My mission here is to provide guidance that we can learn how to build this mental resilience, our emotional intelligence, to become better at navigating the stresses that we encounter every day, and so that we can more easily recover from these stresses, from chronic stress, and then we can be more resilient to them in the future as well. All of those stresses that we're going to encounter tomorrow, and ultimately live a happier, more fulfilling, and joyful life. Today is the first week that we're going to cover eating and mindfulness and all of those things that have to do with our habits and food. How do we stick to a plan when we create it for ourselves? And we'll continue on with this next week as well. First, we need to understand the complexities of appetite and what does this actually mean. This quote from a research article in 2016, appetite, which reflects a complex interaction among the external environment, behavioral profile, and subjective states, as well as the storage and metabolism of energy, has an important role in the regulation of energy balance. Way more factors than I'm hungry or I want this right now or whatever it might be. Rebello is one of the authors, one of the main authors in this paper from 2016, and he highlights the different factors that influence our appetite. It's not just to feed our bellies. In fact, I would argue that for many people, it rarely is. It's not usually the reason we turn to food. Or not always the reason we turn to food. So what does food feed? It does feed hunger. And what kind of hunger? Belly hunger, which might be actually my stomach's empty and I feel hungry. Maybe heart hunger. Or mouth hunger, like a desire or a craving. Or head hunger, to provide a comfort. And how do you feel when you satisfy that hunger? How do you feel 1 hour later, or several hours later, or a day later? What is the impact of you feeding that hunger, whatever type it is? Differentiating and identifying what emotions come up that are associated with a craving or a hunger or a desire can be really impactful. So we created a little model to go through a number of different things. If you can see that here. Our model looks at both of the external factors and the internal factors that contribute to our eating habits. On the external factors, these are all the environmental factors. What food is available? What's the social environment? Who are we sharing food with? And what's the actual environmental setting that we're eating in? And then our internal factors, we have what are our learned habits, maybe our behaviors and expectations, what's our current mood, what's the level of stress that we carry or our mental capacity right now. And then the last one kind of groups our body, our storage, the metabolism of the body, and even the energy state of the body as well. Maybe your immune system is really requiring something, or maybe for females during their menstrual cycle, they have more of a need for carbohydrates, say, or in pregnancy, that changes completely. Which one of these have you ever noticed can we influence or has influenced you? We really can have an impact on all of them. And at some point or other, whether it be early on in our eating cycle or whether it be a little bit later, some of them we can have an impact on a daily basis, and others we can influence at a certain point. When we're going through each one, we can understand then how we can most effectively influence them, most easily influence them in order to achieve our goals. So that's what we're going to do. And just before this, have you ever considered all of your goals that are associated to the type of eating that you want to have and that you want to engage in? So make a list. I encourage you to do this with all of your health goals in relating to your eating habits. Grab a pen and paper. You can make the list now as we chat, or put it on a little reminder on your phone so you don't forget to do it later. What are your goals, maybe linked to your health concerns? Weight loss is a common goal, especially linked to food. Wanting to improve your digestive health. Maybe you feel bloating often or gassy, which can be embarrassing, and really just wanting to feel better. Overall health and staying youthful, wanting to be your best self. This can really have an impact on the types of food that we have can really have an impact on our overall health as we age. Maybe you want to improve your energy, and food can often be related to this. Or maybe you want more control over emotional eating, or binge eating, or overeating. If we look at eating as a system, you choose your food, you buy your food, you prepare your food, then we eat our food, and then we have consequences of our food afterwards. Understanding your motivations and goals that you've listed above can really be helpful in understanding where the system breaks down, where those weak spots are for you, and then how we can best improve it. As we explore all the various things that we can influence about our eating habits, note that there is one thing in common. The earlier that we intervene with mindfulness and with deliberate intention, the more control you have over the outcome. And first, I'll give you a few tips on influencing the external factors of our model. And that's what we're going to go over today. So for our environment, what food is available? That is typically under your control when we have the choice. Here in Canada, we have lots of choice for the most part. It might be limited based on where you live and what you can actually purchase, but for the most part, we have a fair amount of control and a fair amount of different number of foods accessible to us. Where and when do you make the decision of what will be available to you? If you practice pre-food mindfulness, that is, before we're getting to that system where we're actually even have the food at home or are going to prepare and then eat it, we exercise that mindfulness as early as possible in that process. So maybe it's when you're making your grocery list or in the grocery store, wherever it is that you make those decisions. Not in the house, If it's not in the house, it's not on him to eat. And then before you engage in eating in something is also another time to practice it, although I'd argue that's pretty late in the stages there. And it's much harder to stop than it is to not start in the first place. Creating availability of foods that you would like to eat more of is also a way that we can intervene. Cut up veggies and fruits ahead of time, or make a veggie fruit salad, one or the other, or both mixed together, and have more healthy snacks ready to go makes it much more likely that you'll eat them. Especially when you're on that time crunch, because often I hear from people, oh, it's when I don't have time, or I'm exhausted, and all of these different things, or I'm just really hungry by the time I get home, or whatever it is that you're doing. And having those available on hand makes it much more likely that those are the things that you're going to eat. You can squeeze lemon or lime over fruit in particular, but also over salad in order to prevent browning, and then have them fresh for a time. There's also different types of containers that you can use for different types of food. And if you have more tips on those, feel free to share them with our audience here. You can post under our Instagram or on our Facebook feed, or even actually under the YouTube Sage channels there. If you have go-to food pairings, it helps to decrease the decisions that you need to make when it comes to that time of being hungry. So say a staple in my place is to always have a nut or seed butter, maybe almond butter or pumpkin seed butter, something like that on hand, and then some vegetables. So that you can just quick pair them. It's a snack that I really enjoy, it's easy, and it's always going to be available there for me as a quick go-to, even maybe while I'm preparing food if I'm really hungry. Number 2, the social environment. We may or may not have a whole bunch of choice around who we share our food with. If we have family and kids, you might be sharing meals with them, or other people in your home, you might be sharing meals with them. Note your tendencies around different people. What are the expectations that you've learned, or what expectations have been created in certain relationships? For example, eating is a really important social engagement, and that part is why we want to often be free in order to eat a number of different things. We can eat over at people's houses, or we can go out with them. And who has friends that they might get together with for, say, a beer and wings, or a glass of wine? What aspects of this either supports or takes away from your goals? And are there ways to introduce your goals into that relationship where you feel that they will be more supported? I've definitely had some relationships like that where I would get together with some girlfriends, and now we actually talked about it, and surprisingly, all of our goals are met or adhered to much more effectively when we have tea instead of maybe alcoholic beverage or wine or whatever it is. Because we brought up the topic and we talked about it. And I bet you might be surprised at how many people want to actually change their eating habits, but it's just sort of a go-to or an automatic habit to order that beer when you sit down at a restaurant or whatever it is. And just taking those seconds of mindfulness, maybe even before you go out, and then noticing that and being like, okay, today, sitting in the car, little reminder on my phone, whatever it is, a reminder before I go into a restaurant, I am going to order water and tea or water, whatever it is, but when I sit down. Be brave, introduce the topic, have a chat with people, because I bet you would be surprised at the outcome. And the setting. Where are we eating? What are we using to eat? What creates this environment? You do have choice over your environment, again, most of the time. Sometimes more than others, and depending if you're, at work or at other people's houses and all that kind of stuff. But when you can set yourself up for success. Say if you're going to a party in a social space where you want to limit the amount of munchies that you're having, you can actually eat beforehand so that you're not hungry. Or you may decide to have a piece of gum or a mint or something else in your mouth to distract you from this mindless, constant munching. And consider the plate size. you can actually use a smaller plate. I often will choose to use smaller plates to put my whole meal on, or a bowl, or a particular type of container that I love, but that might be smaller in terms of portion than you might normally take. And then consider your plate color. Some of the research that I looked into looks at what colors impact how many calories people eat. And there's a few studies, one of them was done in 2018, showed that fewer calories were eaten when using a white plate compared to a dark red or black plate. Now, there are some other research that gives us a little bit more insight into why that might be the case. And one study found that when you have a darker plate, people eat almost 30% more food. Mostly when the food seems to blend in. So say you had a red plate with some pasta sauce that was red, it kind of blends into the plate, and people are almost less, maybe it's subconscious, but less aware of how much food is actually sitting on that plate. Whereas if you had a white plate and a red sauce, there's a much more bigger contrast in color difference from those, and then you notice how much you're eating, or you notice how much is on the plate. And then same thing then vice versa. So if you have a white sauce with a bunch of veggies or whatever you're eating, and a white plate, people tend to eat a little bit more. Whereas if you have a dark plate and a white sauce, people tend to eat, a little bit less. I would expect too that lighting can change how much we consume. Maybe going on the similar ideas as the plate, in that if you can see your food, you're much more aware of it. Essentially, it's just helping you to be a little bit more mindful of the things that you're eating, of everything that you're putting on your plate, all that kind of stuff. But if you figure this out for yourself, try it with the lights on, in a brighter light, try it in a dimmer setting. I know that's usually a romantic thing. So just see if you notice, would you go back for seconds, or do you tend to put a little bit more on your plate? Hard to tell, and that's why research can be really helpful for this, but I'd be interested to know if anyone has experiences with that. And now, just from these things that we discussed, how many of those have you tried before? Or how many have you thought about before? And if any of them are new or resonate with you, I really encourage you to try them this week. Now I'm going to go through a mindfulness script. This is actually pulled from positivepsychology.com, and it's a script that can be used for mindful eating at the table. So get comfortable, and you can go through this and just imagine it all. And then you can come back to it even and play it later for you and your friends, and introduce some mindfulness before eating. At the dinner table, begin with a simple mindfulness exercise to connect the body and the breath. Sitting comfortably, notice your feet on the ground. Slowly moving your awareness up the body to feel all the physical sensations. Next, tune in to any sounds that you can hear and smells that you can smell. Next, turn your focus to your internal sensations. Allow thoughts to move through your mind without letting them stick. Acknowledge any immediate emotional responses. And take a breath now. Now turn your focus toward your physical signals for hunger or thirst. What are they telling you? Are you feeling full? If you feel hungry, what is your body desiring? If you feel thirsty, what are you thirsty for? Keep your full attention on these sensations until you have the answers. Bring your attention to the food and drink on the table in front of you. And imagine that you are seeing it for the very first time. What do you notice immediately? What details are waiting to be uncovered? Engage all your senses and notice the color, the shapes, the different textures and sizes. What can you smell? How is your body responding? Before you begin to taste, take a moment to reflect on what the food had to go through before being on the table in front of you. Where did it grow? How long did it take? What environments were required? Allow yourself to feel gratitude towards the process and appreciation for everyone involved in the journey of your food to find its way to your table. Next, begin to taste your food. Pick one item and explore it, taking in its color, its texture, and unique smell. Notice any emotional, physical responses that you might have. Do you have memories associated with this food? How does it make you feel? When did you first taste it? Turn your focus on how your body is responding physically. Is your mouth watering? Is your stomach grumbling? How does the anticipation of tasting the food feel? Now place the food in your mouth. Bring your awareness to your mouth as you begin to chew. Notice the flavor and textures. How do these things change as you continue to chew? And how is your body responding? When you are ready, swallow the piece of food and notice the path it takes from your mouth to your stomach. Continue to keep your breath steady and repeat this process as you eat your meal. Feel free to pause and take in this experience together if there are others that you're sharing your food with. I'd love to hear how your experiences go this week with being a little bit more mindful in really tasting your food and then experiencing the environment of what you have control over and what things you might want to change or look into. Thanks so much for joining here on Mental Fortress Mondays. We're going to go through all of the internal aspects that impact our eating next week. Have a wonderful week. Oh, and before I forget, our 30-day challenge is still on. And over our 30-day challenge, just to mention it, for those of you who'd like to do them, there are 4 different suggestions. One is to have a positive thought for at least 17 seconds. Your first thought of the day, hold it in your mind for 17 seconds. Choose something that's light and easy to enjoy. Number 2, set a time to be mindful every single day. Twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon or evening sometime. 3, incorporate at least one physical exercise and movement, physical movements. It can be short, it can be a few minutes, it can be on a roller ball, it can be something new that you wanted to introduce so that you can incorporate it into your lifestyle so that part becomes easier and easier to improve your mobility, flexibility, and strength. And then lastly, you may choose to add on a breathing exercise. I find these ones really fantastic to do after work because it helps to engage that parasympathetic nervous system and just help to calm you down, but you really can do it any time in the day, especially if you need that extra little calming boost. Typically to do it for at least 15 to 20 minutes. I've committed to do these with you guys for 30 days. Today is day 8. Feel free to follow me on Instagram for all of the posts and reminders to do these too. And I'd love to see how these 30 days of incorporating mindfulness practices can change our headspace, build resilience, and help us to de-stress. See you guys next week.